everyone, I'm Radu, and today we're going to see what do we mean by content in Vapor. We know from Swift that we have that Codable protocol that serializes or deserializes the JSON, for example, objects that are passed through a network request. You use encodable to encode, to pass things from your application to the outside world, or decodable to decode things. Well, in Vapor, we have a thing built on top of this, which is called content, and which is quite nice because you can adhere to this protocol, everything, and you can like extract the information and you get them serialized as a nice object. So the Vapor's content API streamlines the process of encoding and decoding codable structs within HTTP messages, like the things that you get, offering ourselves, developers, a robust framework for handling various content types seamlessly. So basically, you don't have to work with Codable, you work with content here in Vapor. Nice. URL query. You handle the data which you pass through the URL, the URI that is transmitted. And you usually do it for GET request. As you can see there, transactions type equals transfer. You like to extract the transfer objects from within the request and use this kind of URL query to handle that. You use like request.query, decode, and you take the parameter. You can also configure stuff. You have two ways of configuring content. You have the global one, which changes the whole application, or one-off. Use a custom coder specific to your needs inside the methods, Swift methods that you want to use that coder within. It's very flexible, as you can see, Vapor, and you can customize how your content is encoded and decoded. You can override those settings as a per request basis or globally. This configuration ensures that all JSON encoding operations adhere to the specific date encoding. For example, if you want to use a custom date decoder or encoder, you would use this strategy with content configuration, global use, or one time off, which is pretty similar with Swift because Vapor is written in Swift, right? Finally, we have hooks like Captain Hook, and you use them to inject custom logic during the encoding or decoding process. We usually have, if you implemented Codable, you have those initializer where you have the coding keys. Well, here in Vapor, we use those things after decode or before decode, where you introduce some custom logic to the decoding process. By implementing these methods, developers can perform actions such as validation or data transformation. So by implementing these methods, you can validate the request, for example, or you can implement a custom logic based on the request that you get, which can be anything. Like you can validate if the strings are empty, or I don't know, it fits a character length. Nice. So let's see in action all those concepts in a real demo. So I have here the terminal, which is pointing to my directory where I have the Vapor server you saw in the previous videos. Now to open the project, I just need to open package.swift like this, or I can select it and put it in the Xcode application. Right, so I have here the routes, and here are on the left the packages and every other folder from the application. I do command R, so it builds and runs the Vapor server. And now if I open Postman, and let's wait for it to start. If I copy here the URL, put it in Postman, I can see here the response report. So the server started. We first want to understand what's content and how it is used, right? So we can create here a small structure. Let's call it person, and let's put a name for that person. Now we need to implement this protocol called content, and we see here convertible to or from content in an HTTP message. That's it. We don't need to do anything else if I command click here, I can get to the Vapor documentation where I see content is already implementing Codable and a bunch of other requests, other protocols, sorry. And we have here an example. If I'm using a struct, I put content, message, and here is how I would get inside my router. I would get the message directly here. So it's a thing that is already conforming to Codable. And I have a lot of more examples here, which I can use to understand better the content protocol. To listen to the incoming request and get the information out of them, we use app.get, which is the route we spoke about, and I have two ways of doing it. I will use the async await part. The path, let's put this under persons, and if I do enter, I already have here the information that I need. Cool, so I have a person, and now I need to take the persons out of the message, out of the request. And to do that, we have request dot content, and here we need to decode it, take the information, right? So we use decode, and it asks me for a decodable dot type. I would like to do it as a person here. And let's do hello person dot name here as a return. It's saying that this thing can throw an error. Well, I haven't used try, so let's use try. I don't have to do catch here because the function throws the error outside. So if you want to implement a proper way, like more dedicated messages to errors, you can do it by do try and map your errors. But for the sake of this example, I won't do that. Okay, so now if I restart the server, but before I start the server, let's do a post now. And I would like to pass the person object inside of the request body. Okay, build succeeded. Server started. If I go to Postman, let's do this a post / persons here. It's JSON, and here is the body. I can do here name John Doe. And here I see that I'm getting the information. Let's put a breakpoint to see what actually it's looking, the request, how it's looking. Send, I hit the breakpoint, and now if I do request, I can see here the parameters. Let's do body. I can see it here, name, John Doe, and I have a post on this URL and a bunch of content types, user agent, other parameters, and the length, like the size of the string that it's actually the message. Okay, and if I command click, I can see what's happening here. It's taking the content here, it's generic, and it configures the decoder, runs this after decode, which is a hook, and then returns the actual content, basically. And I can check also the content. I can do print object content here, which is similar. And you see here, it's part of a private content container object. If I do command click, I see here it's a public var, and here is the protocol, which is the content container of the request. I have the type here and the two methods, which are like decode and encode the data. All right, let's stop it and get back here. Nice. And let's try also a URL query to pass some parameters to the URL. So let's try URL query now, so we can pass parameters to the URL. Here I will pass persons, request in let's take the person out of the request. And it's not content this time. It's query. It's query here. And let's decode the person. Or we can use, I need to pass the type here. We can use request query and have a subscript. And here I can pass name, which is the name of the parameter. And hello from get. And here let's put name or same hello person.name. I can take the optional out, and here let's put the nil coalescing operator to unknown person. Greeting. I change here the method to get person. Now I don't need here to pass anything, and I can say Jane. I can see here that the request queries have been parsed, so I get the name Jane, and I can take it in two ways. I can decode it as a person object here, person instance, or take the name of the request parameter here without using the person here structure. Okay, if I don't pass the valid parameter, I have an error. So it expects here a name parameter. All right. What about hooks? If you remember hooks, we said there are two types of hooks: after we decode and before we encode. We're going to see today the after decode. I'm not going to do encoding because I'm not passing anything. I just take the person out of the request, and I would like to see if the hook is being triggered. Let's put as an extension here. If you remember, if I command click content, I have here the methods, which are part of the protocol before encode and after decode. Called after this content is decoded generally from a request object. So I take the request and I should get after decode when the object has been already decoded. So after decode, let's put a breakpoint and try to hit the endpoint now. I'm restarting the server. Going to change to post here, persons. The app is being run, wait for it. And let's put again name, John Doe, send. The breakpoint is being hit. And now I can check if the name has been already settled. So I have here print object name. I get John Doe. But I can handle it, like I can make this a mutable variable, and I say name unknown here, and I will override the name property with. Now, if I see here property itself is immutable, I can mark it as mutable because I'm using a struct. If I would have used a class, then being a reference type, I don't need this mutating keyword here. All right, server started. Name Jane Doe, John Doe, hello unknown. As you can see, I altered the variable, but here I can provide some validations and I can throw a specific error. Like if the minimum length of the character, think of it of a password here, I can do this kind of validation of length. And in case it doesn't hit the required length, I can throw directly the error or create some kind of a middleware that intercepts this part. Cool. And the final thing that I wanted to show is about the custom strategies of decoding stuff. I'm using the default one right now, but if I would like to have a specific way of decoding things, okay, let's stop this one and make it back to immutable. I can do that like here. If I'm using a JSON decoder, All right. You have this part. If I do decoder, date, decoding strategy, the strategy used when decoding dates from part of a JSON object. I would like to use my own custom strategy for dates and not use the default one. Let's put here a date of birth, and I can use directly date, and it's forever fine. You don't have to use strings to map dates. Vapor is intelligent enough to do that for us. And here I would like to pass something like year, month, and days for it. And I do that using a date formatter object. And the date formatter should use a date format here. And if I have different ways, I can use ISO 8601 seconds, milliseconds, or formatted. Here I'm passing the date formatter from above. All right, so the person should be parsed with this date formatter, but what's missing is that here in the person.self, I need to say, hey, use this custom decoder, don't use the one that is currently is. So I have using, and you see it's like any content decoder, which is a protocol, and I can pass here decoder because it's already like adhering to that protocol. Let's run the project. Open Postman, and if I pass here date of birth, I can say, I don't know, year, month, send, and we should hit this breakpoint. So let's see here, better person that date of birth. The date of birth has been put. It's like I'm GMT -2, so that's why you see here 2020 subtracted 2 hours from midnight. It's fine. I won't. So as you can see, I got the date from the person as this, but you usually have JSONs. You can have like this, and if you use snake cases, you'll see like no such key date of birth at path of birth. I would see this error, no such key date of birth, but I can totally change the way of my decoder strategy with this thing called key decoding strategy. And here I can pass convert from snake case, and it will work perfectly fine, or I can use the coding keys that I want. All right, so I can rerun the server. Server started. If I'm doing again the request, I can see that the result has been parsed. All right. But if I do here, date of birth, it works fine as well. So I'm bringing more flexibility on how I decode the response. And if I want to make this generic and not put here for each request, I can move this part outside and use this thing, content configuration, global that use, and use, you have different ways. Your URL decoder encoder is for GET requests. So you have a URL query encoder and URL query decoder. But now I'm using inside the post method. So I'm looking for a decoder, a content decoder, more precise. And here I can say, or you can use JSON because I'm using JSON. And if I run again, it should work. Server started, I'm redoing the request, and it's working fine. Cool, thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye.